simplify starts and make them like safer and more enjoyable for all of us. We talked a little bit about them during our protest hearings last week. And I think those topics will come up tonight for sure, especially with these videos. So I'm just gonna jump in with a video. I'm gonna reclaim host so I can share. And we're gonna start with this TP52 start. So the context here is that these are all professionals. So everybody on this boat is getting paid to be there, and you can tell because they're all doing something. So I'm gonna turn you around so everyone here can see that. You guys can come in closer if you want. And we'll just watch through this and then I'll go on the board and talk about some concepts. Yeah. We'll stop that there. And stop the sharing. Line you up with the whiteboard again. Good. Okay, so talking through that start, I saw it as 3 different phases, and I'll kind of name this as I go. Phase 1 is finding a hole. Phase 2 is defending the hole. And phase 3 is dial up, start. So everyone is like, I know everyone's pretty familiar with what the start line looks like, but I'm gonna add some things to it that you don't see on the water. And these are the things I'm thinking about as I'm setting up for the start. So we have the pin and the boat and the imaginary line between them. That line lines up with the flag on Byron's boat. And so we're always trying to have some idea of where we are in relation to that line. then there's some other lines that I'm going to draw in, and that would be basically the lay line to the pin. So that's the course that you would take if you were close hauled and starting at the pin. And then similarly, lay line to the boat. So this is where if you're going close hauled to kind of duck the committee boat and start there, that's where you would go. And then the last line, it's a little more arbitrary, but maybe something like 3 boat lengths away from the line. And this is what I consider to be the start box. So I always want to be in this region. I'm not always in that region. But if you're in this area, you have a pretty good chance of having a decent start. So let's talk about why that is. If you get down here, you basically have to go on port to start. And when you're on port, you have no right of way. Everyone else is already coming in to start. You're going to have a hard time. If you're up here, you have to come down to get below the committee boat and start. And if everyone else is stacking up, you may be shut out and have to tack around, go behind everyone. So setting yourself up so that you're in that box is a really good way to go. The lighter the wind is, the more you want to shift this line up, because it gets increasingly hard to get there. I'm going to take my mask off so that everyone can see me talk.
Please do. I want to see that magnificent beard.
It's got a pretty good mask bump going on. Yeah. And so as the wind gets lighter, you want to shift that line up and stay close to the line. As the wind gets heavier, you can give yourself more room to run. So this is where you want to end up. So what we just watched in that video, and those 3 phases that the pros were showing us. First, they were on port tack, running along, something like that. And there's a whole mess of boats doing some variation of that in different places. And what they're doing is looking for a hole. And they're looking for a hole somewhere on this line that they can have freedom to maneuver and start with speed. So they get down around here, they identify where they want to go, and then they tack on to starboard. And I don't know if you remember this, but as they're going, or maybe if you heard it, there was a red boat crossing on port, and they said, go ahead. So they're telling this boat that they don't want them to tack. And that's because as long as they keep sailing, this hole is widening. So they tell them to go ahead, but they start doing a slow tack. And so what they do to defend that hole before they even get there is, as this boat is tacking, they come up to a close hauled course. So that's keeping this boat from coming down and getting in front of them and retaining that hole. The next thing they do as another boat is coming in to tack is they point down at them. And there's limitations on how much you can do that, but there's plenty of room. And what they're doing is they're saying, this is my hole, get out of here. So in that case, they're saying you need to tack. And that boat is starting to tack, but it really forces them to go more this way. As soon as they do tack, they actually come up and do 2 fairly quick tacks. They tack onto port, very close angle, and that's widening this gap even further. And then they tack back onto starboard. So they've gone through finding a hole, they've taken some maneuvers to defend that and widen it. And then all of that is to set them up for this final step, which is dialing up and starting at go. So that's really the reason that you want a hole to leeward, is so that you have room to accelerate and maneuver, and be at maximum speed at go. So any questions about all of that?
Don't forget to keep wind direction into account, because the line's never square. So that box that you drew could also have very different angles.
Yeah.
Depending.
Yeah, we can go onto that topic here in a minute.
What are some of the things you think about when, like, say, when Dave wanted to do a port start at the pin?
Yeah, so if you think about a port start, you're setting yourself up for you have some reason to do it. You're taking a risk, but if you know that you can cross everyone, it can be very advantageous. But when you set up for a port start, you're essentially banking on there being a hole here, which is entirely dependent on everyone else's actions. So it's almost the same as starting here. You're hoping that everyone lets you. But yeah, I guess we can jump into why you would want to start on port or at the pin or at the boat. But all of these maneuvers are very doable by any boat out there. They came up, they came down, they tacked back. It depends on the wind and what sail you have up. You have to make those decisions. But if you do those maneuvers, it sets you up for a good start. Typical starts at more of our level, I'm thinking like when we're out. Yeah, question.
Yeah, in the video, you saw the guy that got forced too low, so he had to tack on the port and go behind other boats. He couldn't make the pin.
Oh, there's a boat that like spun around.
No, he couldn't make the pin. He was too far down.
Too far down.
And he turned on the port tack and had to go behind a bunch of boats.
Yep. Yeah, so that's what being aware of where the pin is and where this line is super critical. You don't want to end up below that because then you're either pinching up to make that or doing some maneuvers and going behind everyone. So yeah, it's super common, especially in starts that are contentious with a lot of boats trying to vie for the same spot. You kind of work your way down the line further and further. And if you're not aware of that and you don't have control of the start, it's very easy to get below that pin or below that ley line and have a much harder time starting. So some good things, maybe I'll back up a little bit and talk about maybe starting from like 10 minutes before the start. So like even further back from this. So at 10 minutes, you should have already had conversations about what sails you want to use and like where you want to go on the course. And then at 10 minutes, that's when you should have everything rigged so that you can go up with sails at any point. Usually we sail around with just our main until the 5-minute gun, and then we put our Genoa up. So that's doing a balance between being prepared for the race and not tiring yourself out, doing a bunch of taxi drives and all that. So at 10 minutes, you decide what sail you want to use, you hook it up, you get ready. At 5 minutes, you put that sail up. And you should be sailing around in this area so you get really familiar with that line, where that pin is. So there are a few different ways that the start line might be set up. In this case, the wind is coming from the top of the board. The line is square. And what that means is to get to some latitude of the wind, you have to sail the same distance from each end of the line. That is equal to that. You can start anywhere on that line and you have an equal opportunity to sail to that line first. But not everything is perfect. It rarely is. So another possibility is relative to the wind, a line that looks like this.
Boat favored.
Boat favored. So the distance upwind is significantly shorter at the boat than it is at the pin, basically by that amount. So that means if you start at the pin, you have to sail that much further distance. So a few ways of knowing if this is the case. The way that's probably most clear is it's easier to sail downwind to the pin. If you're sailing along between the boat and the pin, your sails, when trimmed properly, are further out. You're going faster, easy. When you tack around, you have to trim close to close hauled and sail fairly close to the wind, maybe slower to get back up to the boat. Yeah.
Oftentimes, what I've seen done is my skipper will run the line and then he'll head to wind. And once he's in the no sail zone, he can look to his right and left and be like, okay, the boat is definitely up there and the pin's down there.
Yeah, so with both sails streaming straight back, your main's in the middle of the boat without the sheet controlling it. The jib's running right into the mast. This is the direction your boat is pointing. If the boat is favored, then that angle is going to be smaller than that one. If you can't tell the difference, you can assume that the boat or that the line is square. You don't have to get your protractor out. These lines aren't they're not a mile long. So the advantage is usually pretty small. So, but if you can do this, you can get an idea of which end of the line is favored. Another way to do it is to sail along the line, trim your main sheet until it just stops luffing, and then cleat it. Sail along the line, tack around, keep that main sheet cleated where it is, get yourself lined up with the line again, going the other way. And from that, you can tell, oh, do I need to ease out or trim in that mainsail from where it is to be optimum for this direction? So then you can tell which angle you're sailing upwind more. But no matter how you determine which end is favored, you want to start at the favored end. And if it's a windward leeward, so if there's a leeward mark somewhere down here, then you want to finish at the opposite end because it's that much further downwind. So this is where two boats that start at the same time can finish at drastically different times, even if they do everything else equal. Questions about that? So let's just to look at the opposite case. Pin favored.
Or the Byron Scooby classic.
Hey, Byron's on the call. He heard you say that.
Pin is always favored.
Yeah,
to keep people away from his stinking expensive boat.
Yeah, exactly. So what this looks like is sailing a much closer angle to the pin. And when you do head up to start the race, it's a very small change. And I think race committees tend to go more towards this because most racers want to start at the boat regardless of what end is favored.
It's
so this kind of balances that out.
Attack as much. They stay more in the middle of the course if they start at the boat, and they have starboard right of way. If you start at the pin, you're just going way off to the left side of the course, and that can be troublesome.
Yeah. If you start at the boat, you're going to spend more time on starboard than someone that starts at the pin. So you automatically have some kind of advantage because other people can't tack. So having the pin favored a little bit kind of balances that out a little bit. Ideally, start line should be square, but that's almost impossible to do. The wind is shifting. anchors shift, current shifts. So that's why we have to be aware of what that line is doing and optimizing for it. So let's watch another video, and that's by not so professionals, and we'll talk through what happens there. The audio is pretty funny on this one. I don't know. It's like a cruising boat, but there's some boats around it. There. Way off. Okay. Okay, who has an idea of what happened? Anyone?
I'm trying to figure out the pit. It looked like they went past the pit.
So that was actually, I think this yacht club is not as lucky as us. I don't think they have a race committee. So I think there's someone doing horns from a race boat, and they have buoys in the water. So the buoy we saw was the boat. The boat. So, and then I have no idea where the pin was. And if you listen to what they were saying on the boat, well, before that even, so this is our videographer here. I don't think they even knew where the boat was. They were sailing along, and someone said, oh, "Where is it?" And then I think the guy filming says, "Oh, it's down there." And then they take a sharp turn with like a boat length to go, and then so they're coming in like that. So what do we typically call that? Barging. And I believe the boat below them, you could say they might have been barging too. No one was close hauled coming into that boat end of the line. And then there's another boat coming up that is maybe closer to close hauled. So everyone's kind of coming in parallel. The boat that was filming was kind of above the start line, had to come down at the end.
It kind of looked like they were still ahead of the boat that was below.
Yeah, but they did get overlapped. So that kind of comes into the question we were talking about last week about at what point do you have to communicate and say you can't go in there, and at what point do they have to get out? And what's really interesting about this case is that the boat end of the line is a buoy. So there's really no risk in luffing someone up. They might catch it on their rudder or something like that, but that seems like it's their problem. In this case, the rules that are actually going on are really just 11 windward leeward. So you have the most and the boat that's laughing. But the boat that's laughing is absolutely in the wrong, and they should have gone above that and circled back around. But this really comes down to a pattern of coming into the start on a reach, when really you want to come into the start close hauled and maybe go to a reach at some point and close hauled. And then just line awareness is super critical. So they were not aware of where they needed to be, and that's what got them in that situation. So if we draw in my kind of danger zone lines that I had before, something like that, I think both of these boats probably were taking a risk by being here. This boat was the one that really got hurt by that. As that progressed, seems like they got below that mark. This boat was a little smaller, and it kind of got squeezed out in the back between these two boats. When in reality, they probably were set up the best for that start if everyone was following the rules. So stay below that ley line, especially within that last bit. It's okay, it's a pretty common pattern to sail out away from the line and then kind of time your start up to the line. So, but just enter early into that box and get going on close haul. So that kind of brings me to a thought of like timing your start. And that really becomes pretty easy once you get on close hauled, headed for the start. It's good to do some timing runs before you actually get into the sequence, but to get here and see how long it takes you to sail up that line. The other thing that we do is go from boat to pin and back and see how long it takes to run the line. Usually it's like 45 seconds or a minute. And that tells you you don't want to be here until sometime after that. Because if you're here and you're already on the line and there's a minute and a half to go and it's a minute long line, it's pretty hard to slow down at that point. And you're probably going to be pushing it to make that pin. So if you know it's a minute long line, it's better to be here at 45 seconds than earlier. It gives you more flexibility. But it's much easier to slow down if you're close hauled. So for the kind of boats that we sail on, what I would recommend is being within like 3 boat lengths of the line, probably at a minute and a half, and then just use your sails as a gas and brake. And how I like to communicate this is the skipper just saying, I want to go fast or I want to go slow or fast. And then the trimmers can interpret that and do what they need to do. But always keep the boat moving. Our boats are heavy. They take time to get up to speed. And if you get stalled out, it can take a long time to get back from that. So you don't want to get to that line early, have to stop, and then accelerate again. So kind of get a feel for how long it takes to get your boat moving and how slow you want to go. But just trim and ease those sails as you need to time that right. And ideally, you trim and ease, and then at maybe 10 seconds, you're bearing away and then coming up to close haul, ready to go. And what that does for you is gets you your maximum speed as you cross the line, which is, especially at the level of sailing that we do, it makes such a huge difference. If you can have a little bit more speed across that line, you'll really squirt out ahead of everyone. So you time that right, then you can get onto a broad reach, trim for that. Don't stay sheeted all the way in. So sails out, trimmed to that course. And then at this point, the trimmers have a lot of control over where the boat goes. So the main sheet trimmer should start trimming in first. That brings the bow up, get the Genoa or jib in as you cross the line and go. And if you do this right, you should be going faster than your normal upwind speed as you cross that line. We train this a little bit different for high school sailing because those boats are light and small and accelerate fast. We actually teach them to get to the line. You can park. So you can park at 30 seconds, you can accelerate at 10, and you can start that race. If we did that, it would not work out well. So it's a little bit different. You do have to practice that time on distance and get an idea for where you want to be at a minute, where you want to be at 30 seconds. But having a plan really helps. Even if you get it wrong, then you know what to change.
Can I add a barging, a pro for barging?
Yeah.
On your example?
Yeah.
Is, again, in heavy boats, which we have, you can't stop and start. You're going the same speed all the time. But if someone is doing this, which is an awesome tactic, you get close, you bear off, pick up speed and go in. That's the start. That's a window. So if you are barging, don't be early. If you're out here beam reaching 10 seconds late, that window potentially is there for you. You can come in slightly borne off. And when he's half a boat length across the line, because he just came up, you're going full speed and you can cross right on top of him. Again, the key is do not be early. If you're early, you're out here doing this.
Yeah, and I think it can be a really good start. Kind of like Larry was talking about, either the hole opens, or if it doesn't, you just follow that boat through. Even if you are just right off the stern, that's a pretty good start. It's not the best, obviously. You're now a boat length behind, but now you have full freedom to tack out. So if you really want this side of the race course, or if the boat is really favored, that can definitely be the right place to be. Usually, if there's a favorite end of the line, only but one boat wins it. But other boats can kind of hang on their coattails. Other questions about starting? I have one more video, and then we can talk through any scenarios people want to see.
I have a comment from all the way from Maui. So one tactic I like to do is when I get up to the start line, I want to know which way the current is running and how fast, because that's going to dictate my timing. You want to look at the race committee boat. As you go by the pin, you want to look at how the water's affected on the pin, the anchor chain. And it's really going to matter when you time that line. So on a heavy air day, not so much it's not that big a difference because you got enough power, but on those light air days, that current is either going to press you to the line early, or you're going to be on a treadmill. So just as your 10-minute, sequence, add that to it as well. Look at the currents, look at which way the race committee boat is pointed against the wind. If the race committee is pointed opposite of the wind direction, then the current is ripping. Pay attention to that. So if Byron's bow is like pointed that way, which we've seen in North Americans, it's a real indicator of what's going on. So put that in your calculations as well.
Yeah. So that basically makes it so if we're in this situation where the current is going up the course, so this would be an incoming tide in Penn Cove, then that effectively, if this is the real starting line up here, you should think about there being an imaginary starting line somewhere down there. And you just shift your whole tactic down the course, so that you end up here at go. But being aware of all these things is the most powerful. That's 80%. Knowing what to do with it is the 20%. But if you don't even know it's happening, it makes it impossible to deal with.
Made me think of how I'm only a year into sailing in Penco. I was curious, how does the current generally go in Penco?
I really don't want to tell you guys this. And I know some of you definitely know, but
You know, you gotta earn your stripes in order to know that one.
if
But there are really many different theories as to how it goes, from the reverse toilet bowl to the mushroom cloud.
I would tell you in general, where we start on Thursday nights, that's not really a factor. However, if you're doing like a regatta, like a race week or North Americans or some other regatta where even outside of Penn Cove, those factors are there. Like if you're in a Banana Cortis, the current can rip, you know, all the way through that Guimas area and north towards Bellingham. So, you know, if you go out to the other regattas, pay attention to the race committee boat. It's just kind of a general piece of information you need to make a good start.
so, incoming tide, this is generally the understanding we have. It's not scientific at all. But the tide is coming in, and it's coming from the south most of the time. So it's kind of making this turn. I'll just draw like kind of lines of the pattern that we think it takes. Don't trust me on this. And it's coming in, and then there's that kind of inlet there, and that's going to redirect it kind of out, going up like that, and then there's probably some kind of circling in there and some kind of circling like that. So what does that mean? For one, it's pushing you across the line. So you're going to want to set up later and be expected to be pushed across the line. Two, you might want to go in here, out, and then across, something like that. And then the biggest impact that we've found is getting around that mark and then getting in towards shore, and it doesn't pay off until you get past that point. So you're going to be even with the boats further out. You know, if somebody kept going, you're going to be about even until you get there. But you don't want to be too close into shore, and you don't want to be too far out. But if you find that spot, you can really shoot forward. There's something in the water there. That's our understanding of incoming tide. Outgoing, I don't know. And it can change at any point. So it's like you just have to try things out and get some experience. And if you're doing like Windermere or Race Week or things like that, you'll start to see patterns in where boats are going. And the safe bet is always to just stay with your competition, because you can only be so wrong if you're near your competition.
Say, Gabe?
Yeah.
So this probably doesn't work with our races, but in race week, when we have courses set deeper into the cove, the incoming tide will always is best on the north side, and it's going to there actually is going to be much less incoming effect on the south side, on the Coupeville side, so that you've almost always got a counterclockwise flow on, especially on an incoming tide, but even on a outgoing tide, the Coupeville side is going to be a bigger ebb than the ebb on the north side. With our courses, when we don't set the mark that deep into the cove, it's probably not that much of a factor.
That's the same as what I remember from listening to the Ullman Sales talk about the San Juan 24 North Americans. They always talk about doing exactly what you're drawing there, going north when you're going upwind and go south to Coupeville when you're downwind, because they think it's the counterclockwise toilet bowl.
Right. Yeah. So in both of these situations, downwind, you're just on an incoming tide. You're trying to avoid the current wherever you can get out of it. And generally that's going towards the shore. If we had a very long leeward mark on Thursday night for some reason, it might make sense to go to Coupeville and go down this shore, but that's a long ways to go. Yeah.
So Gabe talked about awareness. Almost always there are boats anchored in Coupeville. If you look over to Coupeville and that boat is tending tail to the east, that's basically indicating you've got this counterclockwise flow. Because the boats will tend into the current, not unless you have a howling wind. They won't line up with wind. On our nominal 5 to 10 knots, they probably won't into that.
Yeah, so light wind current matters a lot. Heavy wind current matters almost nothing. But if you're in a San Juan 24, current always matters.
Yep.
Because it's half your boat speed. Trying to think if we have one more video, which I would say is like the medium skilled start. So any other questions right now, or we'll jump to that? And this is from the race committee vote. So we've had 3 different perspectives. From a vote that knew what they were doing to a vote that didn't know where they were. And now you can watch it from race committee, which I think is, if you ever can't get your boat out, go with Byron. Everything becomes very obvious. I might pause this and talk as I go through it. Yeah. So here, this red boat was doing what the TP52 was doing. They were charging low to try and get below this boat. I don't know if that was the best thing to do, but they were trying for it. Okay, looking at this view, these 2 boats are in danger on the far left of the screen. These are the boats I'm concerned about. I think this boat down here is low enough, but they're basically just late. But this boat up here, I think is gonna run out of room. Wonder, I haven't watched this whole one. I think there might be other starts.
Yeah, they just put the yellow up for the next start.
Ready?
Kind of long enough where it doesn't do this.
Be nice to be racing in Granada, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah.
So this here is kind of what I was talking about sailing up to the line on a close hauled course with sails eased in different amounts to slow down, control speed. Yeah.
One boat's from Canada.
Yeah. So I would say the blue boat got there early and had to stop. They didn't have room to come down. They didn't have room to go forward. So now the race is starting and they're moving. So that's not ideal, even though they were on the line.
The boat with black sails.
Yeah. And you can see how fast they get ahead.
Someone made a port start.
Did they?
I think so.
I think they had to pinch up to make the pin, or they didn't have their main in. Yeah.
So for me or Sojourn, we never want to be there. Never want to be stopped.
Painful process.
I think that's Pearl Gem right there, isn't it, Larry?
the sign flag on it, right?
I think somebody does.
The first one that went up, the next flag is individual recall. This doesn't mean one vote, it means that race vote by vote by vote. Second flag that went up, the blue one with the yellow in the middle, that's general recall. Everybody starts over. Start again. The two horns for general, one horn. So first horn, one horn for individual, and then Byron will probably come up and say, whatever, over early, somebody's over early. He announces it. If you can't tell who is and who isn't, or the whole fleet is over, then it's a general, and you all go back and try it again.
Okay, that's what I had planned for the talk. I'm available for questions or if we want to talk through anything. Yeah, we talked about that, but I'll run through it again because I think it's important. So you have the start boat there. Align something like that. Wind is coming down. So looking at the board, obviously the pin is further upwind. So one way of doing it, pointing head to wind and looking for the smaller angle. So you want to whatever way your bow is pointed more towards is where you want to start. The other way is just if it's very grossly skewed, whichever end is harder to sail to, so more upwind. And then a way of testing that is to sail to one end, complete your main sheet perfectly trimmed on that tack, flip around, sail back down the line the other way. And if you have to ease your main sheet, you're going down the line. If you have to trim it in, luffing, you're going more upwind. So then that's the favorite end. So either way, it's just finding which end is further upwind.
Can I add one more pre-start thing?
Yeah.
Which I think is beneficial. Of course, if I tell you, everybody will do it, and then you'll be in my way. So I'm going to change this a little bit to go back. Remember the chart that Gabe had here with Penn Cove, right? So here's coastline, whatever, here's the coastline. There's a pin over here. So that's your line. So sometime prior to the start, how many people have their bowman up in the front calling the line to see if you're over early or kind of close? I know you do it. So I come out here. The starting line officially is the orange flag on the committee boat and the pin on the other end. So sometime before the line, I come out here and line up the flag, the pin, and the A-frame over here on the south shore of, or whatever is over here. You want that line so that when you're coming back to the start and you've already sailed past the committee boat, you don't really know where the line is. You know, the line is when the buoy lines up with whatever landmark you found over there. You can do it in both directions. You can come from this way over, line it up this direction through the orange flag to Tim McAlpine's house, or whatever lines up over here. And then you have a bearing line through the start finish line to that geographic reference. And you should never be over early.
And it's important, especially for Larry, to realize that your bow is forward of you. So when you're doing that, that's why you have
that's why the bowman does it.
The foredeck does it. Your foredeck calls it when the bow is on the line, which is what counts. And you are referencing, your angle between the pin and whatever's on shore. So then you have a visual reference, even if the pin is covered by other boats or the boat is covered by other boats. I'm going to think if I have anything else. I'm gonna have a real hard time this year if everyone
I know, we're
does
giving
all
away all the
this.
secrets.
Somebody's got Coors Light. I think it's Dustin.
It's that right now.
It's all Dustin.
Oh,
All
no.
Dustin.
Yeah.
Oh, PBR.
Tall boys. Tall boys.
Oh, we got Ace. Hard cider. Okay, I think we're good.
Hey, Super Dave, how are things over there in the in paradise?
Warm,
It's
very warm. Yeah.